It's my pleasure to welcome everybody, and I'd like to call the meeting to order at officially 5:31. This is a organization meeting to select the new chair of the Equity Committee. Mr. Brown, president of the NAACP, is on Teams, and he and I really share the responsibility for getting the meeting going and overseeing the election process of a new chair. And at that point in time, whoever is elected will take over the meeting. So at this point in time, I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Brown, who is on Teams. And Mr. Brown, the floor, so to speak, the screen is yours.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Good evening. First of all, thank you for those who are members of the Equity Committee, especially Mrs. Pender, who's been there in her second term. Mrs. Walker, thank you for diligently sticking around to continue your work. Also for Dr. Bristol, who's new to the process, and also Mrs. Patterson. I pray sincerely that each of you are truly understand and aware of the magnitude and importance of the work you're undertaking. You're being entrusted to move a 53-year-old desegregation order forward. You are serving on a federally mandated committee that is under the umbrella of the Indian River County School District. You are to monitor the 2018 joint plan signed by both the Indian River County School District and the Indian River County NAACP. It is self-explained and defined. You are not a cheerleader nor a mortician for the district. You are being entrusted with monitoring the forward movement of the African-American students, faculty, and staff, and hopefully enhancing their future success. The DSEG order, the 1994 agreement, and the 2018 plan is strictly relative to African Americans. It is not relative to minorities. It enhances students, teachers, administrators, and non-instructional staff of African American descent. Please realize in 1967, 1994, and 2018, these documents refer to African Americans. We, the NAACP, realize that with the success of equality, inclusion, and fair treatment of African American students, it enhances the success of the Indian River County School District. This committee, the Equity Committee, in no way usurps the power of the Indian River County NAACP. The Indian River County NAACP pledges our support to your success. I pledge any support that you need. We want a viable, verifiable, and sustainable equity and equality. Let's make it happen. For those of you who do not understand, this was started in 1967. It is now 2021. Let's get to work. I think we have a board, a chairman of the board who really wants us to move forward. And I commit myself to making this happen in my lifetime. 53 years is too long for us to be stuck and stupid. And with that, I turn it back over to the chairman, Mr. Barefoot.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Well, welcome to the meeting. Before we begin, I would like to invite Rashawn Green, who is retiring, or has retired, I guess, and has provided terrific leadership for the last 2 years. So, Ms. Green, the floor is yours if you would like to say a few words.
Good evening, everyone. I just wanted to congratulate you all about the meaningful and impactful journey that you are taking on with the Equity Committee. You all know that your work will touch thousands of lives of students and employees. They will look to you for accountability, for fairness, for impartiality, and more importantly, for representation. And at times you will feel frustrated, tired, confused, and overwhelmed. And if you don't, then you are not operating at full capacity. Know that your actions will work to change lives. Tonight's chairperson appointment is one of the most important decisions that you all will make. So when you're deciding who you will appoint, you want someone who can lead with integrity, be impartial, and bring the NAACP and the Indian River County School Board together. You also want someone who understands the district as well as the African American community. This desegregation order seeks to assist in receiving equity and fair treatment. And I drove here tonight just to ensure that you all make the right decision. And the right decision, in my opinion, because I actually seeked out this applicant, was Mr. Browning. When I started my appointment, Mr. Browning is who I went to assist me with writing data points. He's who I went to ask about district functionality, like what does the district do, what has the district done in the past, so he's given me like the history for that, and just really historical information and past services. So I just want to really just congratulate you all again and let you all know that if you have any questions, if you need any assistance throughout this process, I am available. And congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Green. Per the requirements in the joint plan for unitary status on page 2, there is, and I quote, one member jointly selected by the 2 members appointed by the school board and the 2 members appointed by the Indian River NAACP. The 5th member shall not be an employee of the school board or a member of the executive committee of the Indian River NAACP. The 5th member shall serve as the equity committee chairperson. This is the 3rd such election. The precedent, Mr. Brown reminded me in our frequent conversations that there are no public comments. The candidates, of which there are 3, their resumes and interest in this position were circulated about a month ago. All the members of the 4 members have had the opportunity to review those resumes, and I would like to thank all 3 candidates, Mr. Kevin Browning, Mr. Michael Marsh, and I don't want to forget Ms. Minotti, Juliana Minotti, who cannot be here tonight. She had a previous commitment with her daughter. I know Mr. Browning's here. Is Mr. Marsh here? Yes, sir. Mr. Marsh, we appreciate very much your interest in this position. And so at this point in time, I want to open the floor and for nominations. And before anyone is nominated, the way this will work is whoever's nominated, we will hold a vote. If a majority of the 4 members have not reached a majority status on the vote, we will then go and ask for another nomination. So as the nominations are teed up, we'll have a vote. So I open the floor. Ms. Patterson's here. Everybody else is on teams. And the floor is open for a nomination.
After reviewing the resumes, I too was impressed with Mr. Browning. He does have background and experience within the school district, even as being in administration and also working in human resources. To me, that's extensive, and it's very vital to this process and moving this work forward. So if I'm allowed, I would definitely nominate Mr. Browning.
All right. Mr. Browning's been nominated. Is there a second to Mr. Browning's nomination? Anybody on Teams, if you're on mute, please go off mute and,
Good evening.
all right. So we have a second. Well, we can have a vote. All those in favor of Mr. Browning as the chair of the Equity Committee, can you please yes, sir.
I also vote for Mr. Browning.
Are we allowed to speak at all as far as do I nominate ourselves?
No, the procedure is whoever's nominated first, a vote is taken. If there's not a second or a majority, then we move on to the second nominee. And the precedent has been that, as Mr. Brown reminded me, that we don't, have not in the past, it's pretty straightforward. It's as I described earlier. So we have Mr. Browning has been nominated. He's been seconded. All those in favor of Mr. Browning as the chairperson, can you please signify by saying aye?
Aye.
Opposed? It seems like Mr. Browning is the unanimous choice of the 4 members of the school board to be its next chairman. Mr. Browning, congratulations. Mr. Marsh, we thank you very much for your interest. I know that, that you've expressed an interest in being involved, and the district is always looking for interested parties. There are plenty of other opportunities, and we hope that you will continue to show your interest and hopefully be involved in the very near future. So thank you. Mr. Browning, here's your seat. We're going to let you run the meeting in a minute, but I will, I'll just, because I have the notes here, Ms. Reichman is going to give an overview, since we have 3 new members of the committee, the Sunshine Law requirements that you should all be aware of. And then I will recognize Dr. Moore, and he will spend a few minutes talking about the roles and responsibilities. And then, Mr. Browning, you can take over, and you can have the rest of your meeting. And you presumably got a copy of the agenda. And you can see what's next if you don't have there toward at the end. So, Ms. Reisman, would you brief everybody, please?
Yes, and I will be very brief for all of you, because I know many of you have knowledge of the Sunshine Law and the Public Records Act. But the real crux of the Sunshine Law is the fact that you cannot speak to each other about matters that might come before you except at this meeting. And even though that sounds simple, it can be hard in practice, because you want to be conscientious about what you're doing, and it can be tempting to try to speak to each other outside of a meeting, either by email or phone or text or something like that. And that is a violation, to speak to each other about something that might come before you outside of this meeting. And so the Attorney General has said that you can send out a one-way email that outlines your position on something to the group, as long as there's no one that will reply to that. And the Attorney General basically said, however, those kinds of position statements are discouraged, because it is so easy to violate the rule by replying. And you can socialize with each other, of course, but it is also tempting to discuss what you have in common. So you have to really be mindful of that. And sometimes there can even be criticism of you when they see 2 of you speaking privately. So just be mindful of that as well, that there's an appearance that maybe you're speaking of something that should be spoken of only at this meeting. There is also a violation of the Sunshine Law if you speak to someone who's not on the committee, who then relays what your position is on something to another person on the committee, that acting as a liaison, that can also be a violation if you do that knowingly. And of course, we know the penalties for violating the Sunshine Law. If it's a knowing violation, people have been sent to jail for that. And almost even worse is that whatever action you take is invalidated, and then you have to go back and redo all that work if there is found to be evidence of a Sunshine Law violation. So you want to be careful about not passing notes to each other, not whispering to each other, even though probably it's just something very inconsequential, but it's still something that can appear to be, that you're trying to change the course of the committee through speaking individually. Then there's also the Public Records Act, which is both of these, the Sunshine Law, Public Records. Florida is probably at the extreme for both of these in terms of how liberally they are interpreted in favor of the public. So we have basically everything that you work with for this committee is public record, as you know. And if you get something via email to your personal email, if it relates to this equity committee, then you should forward it to, Brenda, are you the records custodian for this? Or yeah, for the committee. So if you would forward it to Brenda, and that way, if, because people have had their personal computers seized and gone through because there's a suspicion that they're not doing that they're not taking care to forward everything. So that is something you want to really keep in mind. And if you get any, which we don't get anymore, we don't get any snail mail, but if you do get something like that, just make sure that Brenda has a copy of it. And there's retention requirements for public records, so we have to be sure we keep them the certain amount of time that the state requires. Now, if you send, personal emails, then those are not public record, but as I said, your personal computer, it's tempting to use that for committee business, and you've got to be careful because those will be considered public records. And once again, the penalties are quite severe. There's fines, and then it's a first-degree misdemeanor if you conceal something knowingly. So that is the basics of it, and please do reach out to Brenda, and then she'll get to me if you have any questions at all, because a lot of this does seem sort of counterintuitive. You've got to just save everything for your meetings. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mrs. Reichman. Dr. Moore.
Thank you, Mr. Barefoot, and I too will be brief, as I know this is just an organizational meeting. And I'd like to begin by echoing the comments made by Mr. Brown. I don't think I could say it any better. This is bold, courageous work that really needs to be done, and it is time really to move the work forward. So as we engage in this work, we engage collaboratively with the sole purpose of listening to feedback and ensure we as an organization are doing absolutely everything we can in order to improve academic performance, the quality of life for African American children in this district. So this is very valuable conversations and dialogue in which we connect and engage in. But the work is here and it is now. So it is February, and I wanted to quickly go through some organizational structures. Mr. Browning, of course, we will follow up and get everything squared away prior to the next meeting, but there are some deadlines that are quickly approaching. So in order to capture the conversation, I put together a few slides that we'll share real quickly from the beginning. So typically, this meeting should have been convened last month. It is a requirement of the joint plan to have this committee identified in January. It is now February. We have information, a joint report that is due to the courts in March 15th. I know each and every single one of you fully understand your responsibilities as it relates to the Equity Committee, and we want to make this as seamless as possible for you as we possibly can. Understanding you are volunteers, we want to make your contributions to this work as effortlessly as possible. But understanding, as Mershawn said, and Mershawn is correct, it is a big undertaking. But we want to, from a systems perspective, make it as easy on you as possible. So some things that we learned, Sunshine, we kept that. We want to post agendas a week before. So as mentioned before, Brenda Davis is the arm of support for the Equity Committee. She'll be responsible for collecting the agendas, posting them, making sure all of the scary things that were just said in terms of agendas, we are in compliance and they are posted. And that will be a resource that is available to you as the chair as well as the other members. Just common practices that we think are good ideas, agendas, and this is something that Mershawn did, items that Equity Committee members would want on the agenda, discuss prior while you're in the sunshine to avoid this so we can post that and develop it into the next agenda, as well as any information or data request that Equity Committees would want. This affords staff enough time to pull the data and the information and make it available to you prior to your next meeting. So we're not running around or scrambling, and you have time to digest in order to provide recommendations. So two key practices: creating the agenda in a meeting for the next upcoming meeting, which avoids any sunshine issues, as well as identifying any data points or resources that would be provided. And then also, if we could pull this up, one of the things that we've learned over the course of the year, it is the volume of work that's being done is tremendous. And it is a daunting task to look at what is being done across a $300 million organization. So one of the suggestions that we're proffering is to provide the information that's being done on a quarterly basis. So the first report is due to the courts in March. March 15th is the deadline for that report. We have all 22 schools working, as well as the district in terms of system support. If you can pull that up, Sarah, we have provided to you in the information that we have for you this evening, and we'll send it electronically. This is broken down by each section of the joint plan, and it identifies the action steps that are currently being taken by the school system, the responsible staff, and then considerations for you as the Equity Committee to provide progress monitoring support, as well as some of the artifacts that we would provide to you within each of the sections of the joint plan. This allows you the opportunity to receive this information prior to coming to your next meeting, the opportunity to digest those artifacts, so when you come together, you can in fact have conversations focused on all areas of the joint plan or a specific area to the joint plan. And the recommendation would be is, as you have this conversation as a committee, the following week would be the opportunity to provide that feedback directly to the school board as well as the executive committee for the NAACP. Therefore, it is very, very streamlined. It is keeping us in constant contact in a very transparent, upfront way, ensuring as the Equity Committee has feedback, has recommendations, they're not being shared in isolation. You'll have the opportunity to come to the joint meeting or a school board meeting, or a combination of both, very similar to what we did at our last meeting, come and provide that feedback to both bodies. So we're clearly being transparent, while at the same time having the bold and courageous conversations that need to take place in order to move the work forward. So you have that tonight. This information, this will be provided to you a week prior. But if we go back to the schedule, you will see That's the big picture. Here is some required submissions. So March 15th is a joint report. The joint report is the NAACP and the School Board of Indian River County. And we would have the opportunity to receive your feedback on the district's progress prior to the creation of that report. Then in September, that would be the 6th joint status update. In November, that is a presentation which the committee, that's when it gets really, really busy for the committee. You put together a presentation, you design the presentation, and it is provided at a school board meeting to provide the progress the system is making towards each of the areas within the joint plan. And then there is an annual report that is due to the courts by December 15th. Now, that report is either done in combination between the NAACP and the school district, but the school district can also give that authority to the equity committee to provide that report. Currently, we're working through the NAACP and the school board in the creation of that report for last year, but that would be a decision that would be made at a later time. So there are some things, these are recommendations. I think, Mr. Browning, one of the tasks that you have now is to create a schedule, or at least when the next meeting would be. My recommendation is you look at some potential dates that are there. And if it's just scheduling just the first and then circling back and being more detailed, then so be it. But you can see there is information that we'd like to begin to get to work so we can provide information to the courts collaboratively by March 15th. So with that, that is a very, to the point presentation on what lies ahead. So I'll be happy to answer any questions anyone may have as we move to scheduling.
So if you can bring the group back up on Teams, or Mr. Browning or Mrs. Patterson or other members that are on Teams, any questions for either Mrs. Reichman or Dr. Moore? No questions?
Hello. Hello, this is Pender.
Go ahead.
Okay, I think my question answered, because I was going to ask about the agenda. So in the future, we will, when we meet, we will decide what's going to be on the agenda, and then we will get it the week before we have the actual meeting.
Ms. Penner, that would be my recommendation. Now, ultimately, the agenda would be crafted by the committee, and I think it's the most upfront, transparent way is to create the agenda prior to closing the previous meeting. So the meeting that, if it is scheduled in early March, topics would be discussed tonight. And you may not be,
yeah.
But yes, collectively, that keeps everyone on the same page.
Okay.
Any other questions? I think the message here, and I see all my fellow school board members are present, Mrs. Berenborg, Dr. Jones, Dr. Schiff, Mrs. Rosario. I can't speak for them, but in this case I will. We want this thing to move forward. It's 53 years is a long time. There's a lot of people in this room that 53 years, I'm not one of them. 53 years ago, we weren't even on this planet. And this is an opportunity. I'm sure it's been said before, probably many times, but this is an opportunity. I think the tone of the discussions between the school board, the superintendent and his senior staff, and Mr. Brown and his executive committee has been constructive. I think the tone at the moment, not to suggest that it wasn't in the past, but I think it's excellent. We've got a little momentum, And I know that we all look forward to working with you, helping you, supporting you in every way we can. And so challenges are really opportunities. And so that's what we have here. And if I don't have anything else. Mr. Brown, would you like to say a few words, and then we'll turn it over to our new chairperson, Mr. Downing?
Yes, first of all, Kevin Browning, thank you. We are truly indebted, but I would be remiss if I did not ask the superstar in the room to please stand up and take a bow. That's Miss Marshawn Green. That young lady has done an awesome job in the last 2 years, and the Indian River County community is totally indebted to her. Take a stand, Marshawn.
Everyone's clapping.
We commitment, her unselfishness, her humbleness, her dedication, and her desire to make this work. We've had some long sessions. Kevin, I know you're up to the job. We're available for you 24 hours a day. Let's get her done.
Yes, sir.
Well, the floor is yours, and you got your marching orders.
Yes, sir, I do. Just want to say thank you. I'm extremely humbled to be here with all these faces, that many of them that I know, and good to see all of you again. I don't know why I said yeah, because those are some big shoes to fill of Marshawn Green. One of the first things that I saw was a chairperson, and it said Attorney Green. So I'm like, oh, I don't know if I can do this. But like she said, I have been here before, sort of, and ready to go ahead and let's just move it on. 53 years is a long time. That being said, if the first date is March 15th, as you said, Dr. Moore, and you had a date of a potential next meeting of March 2nd, sounds good to me. So would it be, do we roll with the 6 o'clock time or 5:30 or?
Typically, the preference has been 5:30, but I will do it the will of the board.
Yeah, I see, Ms. Green, yeah.
Yeah, if I may speak, you all as a group determine if it's okay, because what we found, there are conflicts with Wednesdays or Thursdays, so when you're deciding a date, we make sure that everyone in the group can attend on those days.
Yeah, I looked at the March 2nd, and that looks like that's a Tuesday. And is that good for everyone else in the group? I think I see some heads shaking, so that 2nd is good. And the sharing or providing of the information that we'll get it before that time, right?
Yeah. So a minimum of a week ahead. So I think we're mid-February, and this cycle takes us through March. So by, end of business this week, no later than Monday, you'll have that information available with a full week to digest. And once again, that just gives you the opportunity to look, probe, ask questions. Maybe there's something in addition, but it puts you in a much better place of having to get information and, provide recommendations within the same exact meeting, so that you'll have that information at least a week. And as we move forward, it'll be even earlier than that.
All right, very good. And that should come from Ms. Brenda, I think you said?
Yeah, most communications would be coming from Brenda or myself.
Okay, and it will be basically the progress report that the district is working on.
Absolutely.
All right, so when I visited last week, you were working on a joint statement that is already gone.
Yes. Yes, sir.
Okay, all right, and so we'll just look forward to that one. I didn't see the other dates I think those dates are probably very good, but let's take a look at those dates, please, if you could. That chart that you had up.
It's at the bottom of that piece of paper I gave you.
Yes, sir.
Those
But he
are
had-
delivery dates, but you can meet any time in between
Okay.
those dates.
Well, then that's probably fine. We can just start with this one, and I'll take a look at those a little later. So this works for me. I think that's
So,
about,
so that's it.
yes, sir.
Well,
Well, let's hope they all go like that.
What'd you
I said,
say?
let's hope they all go like this.
so, any other comments from you, Mr., anybody on Teams? Mr. Jones? Well, would you like to call adjournment to your first meeting?
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. At 6:09 PM, we're adjourning.